The sound of shattering glass echoed through the Red Sable saloon, as Sophia Brennan swept her skirts aside and stepped over the unconscious gambler sprawled at her feet, her heart hammering against the heavy pouches sewn into the layers of her petticoats. 300 miles behind her, and 300 more to go, and every ounce of gold dust pressing against her thighs felt like a death sentence waiting to be carried out. It was July of 1876, and Cheyenne, Wyoming Territory, was a halfway point between the California goldfields where her father had died and the St. Louis banking house that held the deed to their family home. The gold dust, hidden in the specially sewn pockets of her undergarments, represented everything her father had spent 5 years mining, and it was all that stood between her mother and sisters and destitution. Sophia had volunteered to make the journey because at 23, she was the eldest, the strongest, and the one most willing to risk everything. She had not expected the gambler to recognize her from the stagecoach depot, had not anticipated his drunken announcement that a woman traveling alone from California might be carrying more than just her virtue. The bottle she had smashed over his head had solved the immediate problem, but now every eye in the saloon was fixed on her, and she could feel the weight of their speculation as surely as she felt the weight of the gold. "I think you had better come with me, miss." The voice was deep and quiet, cutting through the sudden silence like a knife through butter. Sophia turned to find herself looking up at a tall man in dusty trail clothes, his dark hair curling slightly beneath a worn hat, his gray eyes steady and unreadable. A silver star gleamed on his vest. Before anyone else decides to test whether that fellow was speaking truth or whiskey, her first instinct was to run, but running would only confirm suspicions. Instead, Sophia lifted her chin and met his gaze directly. "I was defending myself from unwanted advances, Deputy." "Surely that is not a crime in Wyoming Territory." "No, madam, it is not." The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "But causing a disturbance is my business, and I would prefer to discuss this somewhere other than Jim Holloway's establishment." He gestured toward the door with a courtesy that seemed at odds with the gun on his hip. "If you would be so kind." Sophia calculated her options in the space of a heartbeat. Refuse and draw more attention, or comply and hope this lawman was as honest as his steady gaze suggested. She had trusted her instincts this far. "Very well, Deputy Isaac Zimmerman," he supplied, touching the brim of his hat. "And you are Sophia Brennan." She walked ahead of him toward the door, conscious of his presence behind her, close enough to be protective but not threatening. The gold dust shifted slightly against her legs as she moved, and she prayed he could not hear the faint whisper of it. The evening air outside was cooler, carrying the scent of dust and horses and the distant smell of rain. Isaac guided her not toward the jail as she had feared, but toward a small office, 2 buildings down, with Deputy Marshal painted on the window. He held the door for her, and she entered to find a surprisingly neat space with a desk, 2 chairs, and a pot-bellied stove in the corner. "Please sit down, Miss Brennan." Isaac closed the door behind them and moved to the stove where a coffee pot sat warming. "Would you care for coffee? You look like you have been traveling hard." "I would, thank you." Sophia settled carefully into the chair, arranging her skirts to disguise any telltale bulges. She watched as he poured 2 cups with the easy competence of a man accustomed to caring for himself. His hands were strong and steady, marked with old scars, the hands of someone who had worked and fought and survived. He handed her a cup and leaned against the edge of his desk, studying her with those thoughtful gray eyes. "You came in on the afternoon stage from the west." It was not a question, but Sophia nodded. "Yes, I am traveling to St. Louis." "That is a long journey for a woman alone." He sipped his coffee, his expression neutral. Dangerous, too, especially with the rumors of road agents working the routes through Nebraska territory. I am aware of the dangers, Deputy Zimmerman. I am also aware that I have little choice in the matter. Sophia met his gaze steadily. My father died 3 months ago in the California goldfields. I am bringing his personal effects home to my family. It was the story she had rehearsed 100 times, true enough to be believable, vague enough to avoid specifics. Isaac was quiet for a long moment, and she could see him weighing her words, measuring them against whatever he saw in her face. "I am sorry for your loss," he said finally, and there was genuine sympathy in his voice. "Mining is hard, dangerous work. A lot of men do not come back from the goldfields." "No," Sophia agreed softly. "They do not." Isaac set down his coffee cup and crossed his arms, and Sophia felt her pulse quicken. This was the moment that would determine everything. "That gambler, Tom Brennan, no relation, I assume?" "None whatsoever. He is known for running his mouth when he is drunk, which is most of the time. I would not put too much stock in his accusations." Isaac paused. "But I would also suggest that you continue your journey as soon as possible. Cheyenne is growing, and with growth comes the kind of men who see opportunity in every stranger who passes through." Relief flooded through Sophia so suddenly that she had to grip her coffee cup to keep her hands from shaking. "I plan to take the eastbound stage tomorrow morning, Deputy." "Good." Isaac straightened, and for a moment Sophia thought the interview was over. Then he said, "The stage leaves at dawn, which means you will need a place to stay tonight. Mrs. Henderson runs a respectable boarding house 3 streets over. I will walk you there and make sure she has a room available." "That is very kind of you, but I could not impose. It is not an imposition, Miss Brennan. It is my job." His tone was gentle but firm. "And call it instinct, but I believe that gambler was not the only one who noticed a woman traveling alone. I would rest easier knowing you were safely settled for the night." Sophia wanted to argue, wanted to insist on her independence, but the exhaustion of 300 miles of constant vigilance was catching up with her. And there was something about Isaac Zimmerman's quiet competence, his straightforward manner, that made her want to trust him in a way she had not trusted anyone since her father's death. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I would appreciate that very much." The walk to Mrs. Henderson's boarding house took less than 10 minutes, but Sophia was acutely aware of every step, every shift of the gold dust hidden in her petticoats, every glance from the people they passed. Isaac walked beside her with an easy confidence, nodding to acquaintances, his presence a shield that kept the curious at a distance. Mrs. Henderson proved to be a plump, gray-haired woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner. She looked Sophia up and down, seemed satisfied with what she saw, and quoted a price that was fair. Sophia paid for the room and a hot bath, counting out coins from the small purse she kept visible, painfully aware that the real treasure was literally weighing down her undergarments. "I will come by in the morning to escort you to the stage," Isaac said as Mrs. Henderson bustled away to prepare the room. "What time would you like to leave?" "The stage departs at 6, does it not?" Sophia asked. "Perhaps 1/4 to the hour would be appropriate. 1/4 to 6, then." Isaac touched his hat brim. "Sleep well, Miss Brennan. You are safe here." She watched him walk away, his long stride eating up the dusty street, and wondered why the assurance from this stranger, this lawman who could destroy everything if he searched her, made her feel safer than she had in months. The room Mrs. Henderson showed her to was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the street. The promised bath arrived shortly after, carried up by Mrs. Henderson's teenage son in a hip tub, followed by buckets of steaming water. Sophia locked the door, drew the curtains, and for the first time in 300 miles, allowed herself to remove the petticoats. The gold dust had been divided into multiple small pouches, each carefully sewn into the layers of fabric, distributed to avoid creating obvious bulges. It was her father's solution, conceived during his final illness when he realized he would never make the journey himself. "They will search your bags, Sophia," he had whispered. "They will search your person if they think you are carrying something valuable. But no decent man will ask you to remove your petticoats." She had thought him brilliant and also desperately sad, to have worked so hard for so long only to die before he could bring his fortune home. Now, sinking into the hot water, feeling the ache in her legs where the weight had pressed against her for endless hours, Sophia allowed herself a moment of grief. Then she allowed herself to think about Isaac Zimmerman. He could not be much older than 30, she judged, and there was a steadiness about him that spoke of experience hard-won. He wore his authority lightly but certainly, and he had looked at her with respect, not the calculating assessment she had grown accustomed to from other men. He had believed her story, or at least had chosen not to question it, and that was a gift she had not expected. She wondered what he would think if he knew the truth. Would he arrest her? The gold was legally hers, inherited from her father, but she had no papers to prove it. Nothing but her word and the memory of her father pressing the modified petticoats into her hands. "Trust no one," he had said. "Get it home safe, Sophia. Take care of your mother and sisters." Sophia finished her bath, dried herself, and reluctantly donned the petticoats again. The weight settled against her like an old familiar burden, and she carefully arranged her dress over them, checking in the small mirror to make sure nothing showed. Sleep came easier than she expected, perhaps because for the first time since leaving California, she felt genuinely safe. When she woke to the sound of roosters crowing in the pre-dawn darkness, she was surprised to find that she had slept through the night without nightmares. She dressed carefully, plaited her dark hair, and pinned it up in a simple style. Mrs. Henderson provided a breakfast of eggs and fresh bread, and Sophia ate slowly, savoring the hot food. At precisely 5:45, there was a knock at the door. Isaac Zimmerman stood on the porch, his hat in his hands, looking freshly shaved and somehow more human in the gentle morning light. "Good morning, Miss Brennan. Are you ready?" "I am." Sophia collected her small traveling bag, thanked Mrs. Henderson for her hospitality, and followed Isaac into the street. Cheyenne was just beginning to wake, shopkeepers opening their doors, the smell of coffee and bacon drifting from the restaurants. The stage depot was alive with activity, the coach already being loaded with mail and freight, horses stamping in their traces. "Looks like you will have company," Isaac observed, nodding toward the other passengers gathering near the coach. "That should make the journey safer." Sophia counted 4 other travelers, an elderly couple, a businessman with a fastidious manner, and a younger man who looked like a clerk or schoolteacher. All respectable, all unlikely to cause trouble. Relief eased another knot of tension in her chest. The stage driver, a grizzled man with tobacco-stained whiskers, was calling for passengers to board. Sophia turned to Isaac, suddenly reluctant to say goodbye to the one person in 300 miles who had made her feel safe. "Thank you, Deputy Zimmerman, for everything." "Isaac," he said quietly, "and you are welcome, Miss Brennan." He hesitated, then added, "I hope you make it home safely. I hope whatever you are carrying, visible or otherwise, brings you and your family the security you need." Sophia felt the blood drain from her face. Isaac held her gaze for a moment, then shook his head slightly. "I am not asking. I am just saying that I hope your journey ends well." She did not know what to say. "Thank you, Isaac. Last call," the driver shouted. Eastbound to Fort Laramie and points beyond, mount up or stay behind." Sophia started toward the coach, but as she reached for the door, a shot rang out. The sound echoed through the morning air, and suddenly everything was chaos. Horses screamed and reared, passengers scattered, and the businessman collapsed with blood spreading across his shirt. 3 men on horseback materialized from the alley beside the depot, guns drawn, faces hidden behind bandanas. "Nobody move," the lead rider shouted. "This is a robbery. Hand over your valuables and nobody else gets hurt." Sophia froze, her heart hammering. This could not be happening. Not now, not when she was so close. She felt Isaac's hand on her arm, pulling her back, shielding her with his body as he drew his gun. "This is Deputy Marshal Zimmerman," he called out, his voice carrying clear authority. "Put down your weapons and surrender." The lead rider laughed. "1 lawman against 3 of us. I do not think so, Deputy. Now tell everyone to hand over their money or we start shooting passengers." The elderly woman was crying, her husband trying to comfort her while fumbling for his wallet. The clerk looked ready to faint. And Sophia stood frozen, knowing that if they searched her, if they found the gold, everything her father had worked for would be stolen by these outlaws. Isaac's grip tightened on her arm. "When I move," he whispered, barely audible, "you run for the depot office and get behind the counter. Understand?" "But now," Isaac shoved her toward the office even as he fired, his first shot taking the lead rider in the shoulder. The man howled and his horse bolted, careening into one of his companions. The third rider wheeled his mount toward Isaac, but the deputy was already moving, using the stagecoach as cover, firing again with deadly precision. Sophia ran, her skirts tangling around her legs, the gold dust heavy as lead. She made it to the depot office and threw herself behind the counter just as return fire shattered the window above her head. Glass rained down, and she covered her head with her arms, praying desperately for Isaac's safety. The gunfight seemed to last forever, but was probably less than a minute. When the shots finally stopped, Sophia cautiously raised her head. The depot yard was a scene of carnage. 1 outlaw dead, 1 wounded and being held at gunpoint by the stage driver who had produced a shotgun from somewhere, and the 3rd fleeing at a gallop with Isaac's final shot pursuing him. Isaac himself stood in the middle of the chaos, reloading his gun with steady hands, a streak of blood on his temple where a bullet had grazed him. When he saw Sophia peering over the counter, relief flashed across his face. "Are you hurt?" he called. "No, are you? Just a scratch." He finished reloading and holstered his gun, then moved to check on the wounded businessman. The man was alive but needed immediate medical attention. Isaac barked orders at the gathering crowd, sending someone for the doctor, someone else for the marshal, organizing the chaos with the same calm competence he had shown the night before. Sophia emerged from behind the counter on shaking legs. The elderly couple were unharmed if traumatized. The clerk was sitting on the ground looking dazed, and Isaac was kneeling beside the wounded businessman, using his bandana to apply pressure to the gunshot wound. "The doctor is coming," Isaac told the man. "You are going to be fine. The bullet went clean through." The businessman nodded weakly, his face pale with shock. Sophia knelt beside them, her medical knowledge limited but her instinct to help overriding her fear. "Is there anything I can do? Keep pressure here," Isaac said, guiding her hands to hold the bandana in place. Their fingers touched, and Sophia felt a jolt of awareness that seemed inappropriate given the circumstances, but was undeniable nonetheless. The doctor arrived minutes later, a competent-looking man who took over the businessman's care. The town marshal appeared shortly after, a gray-haired veteran who surveyed the scene and then clapped Isaac on the shoulder. "Good work, deputy. Looks like you broke up the Harlan gang. What is left of it? Isaac agreed. The one that got away was riding east. You might want to send word to the fort. Already done. The marshal turned to the assembled passengers. I am afraid the eastbound stage is going to be delayed while we sort this mess out. Might be tomorrow before it runs again. Tomorrow. Another day in Cheyenne, another day of carrying her secret, another day closer to discovery. Sophia felt despair rising but pushed it down. She had come too far to fall apart now. Miss Brennan. Isaac was at her elbow, his expression concerned. I know this is not what you wanted to hear, but it is not safe to travel today. The third robber is still out there, and he might have friends. I understand. Sophia heard the weariness in her own voice. I suppose I should secure another night at Mrs. Henderson's. Actually, Isaac said slowly, I have a different suggestion. My sister runs a small ranch about 5 miles outside of town. She could use the company, and it would get you away from Cheyenne until things settled down. I am riding out there this afternoon to check on her. You could come with me, stay the night, and I will bring you back tomorrow for the stage. It was a generous offer, perhaps too generous. Sophia studied Isaac's face, looking for ulterior motives, but saw only honest concern. And the thought of getting away from the curious eyes and whispered speculation in town was powerfully appealing. Your sister would not mind an unexpected guest. Sarah has been after me to bring more civilized company to dinner for months. She will be delighted. Isaac's expression softened. You will be safe there, Sophia, I give you my word. The use of her first name felt intimate, a small bridge crossed. Sophia took a breath and made her decision. Then I accept with thanks. When do we leave? 2 o'clock, if that suits you. I need to help clean up here and file a report, but then I am free until tomorrow. Isaac glanced at the sun, calculating time. Why do not you go back to Mrs. Henderson's and rest? I will collect you at 2. Sophia agreed and made her way back to the boarding house, her mind racing. Another delay. Another risk, but also another day with Isaac Zimmerman, and she found that prospect less alarming than it should have been. Mrs. Henderson was full of questions about the shooting, which had already become the talk of the town. Sophia answered what she could, downplayed her own involvement, and retreated to her room to think. The gold dust pressed against her thighs, a constant reminder of her mission. 300 miles behind her, 300 more ahead, and now this unexpected detour. But Isaac had saved her life this morning, had put himself between her and the outlaws without hesitation. That meant something. At precisely 2 o'clock, Isaac arrived with 2 horses, a rangy bay gelding and a smaller chestnut mare. He had changed his clothes and cleaned the graze on his temple, though a small bandage still marked the spot. He looked tired but also energized, the way men sometimes did after danger had passed. The mare is gentle, he assured Sophia as he helped her mount. Sarah rides her when she comes to town. Sophia settled into the saddle, grateful that her riding skills had not completely atrophied during the long stage journey. The gold dust shifted slightly, and she adjusted her position carefully, making sure everything was secure. They rode out of Cheyenne at an easy pace, following a well-worn trail that led northeast across rolling prairie. The sky was vast and blue, dotted with white clouds, and the wind carried the scent of grass and sage. It was beautiful country, harsh but honest, and Sophia found herself relaxing despite everything. You ride well, Isaac observed after they had been traveling for about half an hour. My father taught me when I was young. He believed women should know how to handle horses and guns both. Sophia smiled at the memory. My mother thought he was being ridiculous, but my sisters and I loved it. Your father sounds like he was a practical man. He was, practical and stubborn and convinced he could make his fortune in the goldfields. Sophia's smile faded. He did eventually. But it cost him everything. Isaac was quiet for a moment, his gaze on the horizon. I lost my father 10 years ago. He was a marshal in Kansas, killed by outlaws he was trying to arrest. I was 20 years old and thought I knew everything. His death taught me I knew nothing at all. Is that why you became a lawman? Partly. Also because I was not good for much else. Isaac's tone was self-deprecating. I tried farming, tried clerking in a store, tried a dozen different things. But this is what I understand. This is where I can do some good. You did a great deal of good this morning, Sophia said quietly. That businessman would be dead if not for you. We all might be. I was doing my job. No, Sophia reined in her horse and waited until Isaac did the same, turning to face her. You were being brave. There is a difference. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, an understanding that went beyond words. Isaac's gaze dropped to her mouth, then back to her eyes, and Sophia felt heat rise in her cheeks. The moment stretched, charged with possibility, and then Isaac cleared his throat and gestured ahead. The ranch is just over that rise. Come on, I want to get there before Sarah starts wondering if I forgot. They rode on, and Sophia tried to ignore the way her heart was racing, tried to tell herself it was just the aftermath of the morning's violence, just gratitude for his protection. But she knew it was more than that. Isaac Zimmerman had gotten under her skin in less than 24 hours, and that was dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with outlaws or stolen gold. The ranch came into view as they crested the rise, a modest but well-maintained spread with a sturdy house, a barn, corrals, and what looked like a chicken coop. A woman emerged from the house as they approached, shading her eyes against the sun, and then waved enthusiastically. Isaac. You actually came when you said you would. Miracles do happen. Sarah Zimmerman was perhaps 25, with the same dark hair and gray eyes as her brother, her face sun-browned and smiling. She wore a simple dress with an apron over it, her sleeves rolled up, and she moved with the easy confidence of a woman comfortable in her own space. I brought a guest, Isaac called as they drew near. Sarah, this is Miss Sophia Brennan. Sophia, my sister Sarah. Any friend of Isaac's is welcome here, Sarah said warmly, reaching up to help Sophia dismount. Though I have to say, I am surprised he has friends I have not met. He usually just grunts at people and calls it socializing. Sarah, Isaac said with a long-suffering tone that suggested this was old territory. It is true, and you know it. Sarah linked her arm through Sophia's and started toward the house. Come inside, Miss Brennan. You look like you could use some coffee and something sweet. I just made apple pie this morning. Please, call me Sophia, Sophia said, liking this woman immediately. And I would love both those things. Isaac took care of the horses while Sarah ushered Sophia into the house, which proved to be as neat and welcoming inside as it appeared from outside. The main room served as kitchen and living space both, with a large fireplace, a solid wooden table, and curtains that let in the afternoon light. Photographs on the mantel showed a younger Isaac and Sarah with two people who must have been their parents. Sit, please, Sarah insisted, cutting generous slices of pie. Isaac told me nothing except that he was bringing a guest, which means there is a story here. Tell me everything. Sophia hesitated, but there was something about Sarah's open, friendly manner that invited confidence. She gave an edited version of events, the story about her father's death and her journey home, the attempted robbery that morning, Isaac's invitation to spend the night at the ranch. Sarah listened intently, her expression shifting from sympathy to anger to admiration. You have had quite an ordeal. And you are traveling all the way to St. Louis alone. That is remarkably brave. Or remarkably foolish, Sophia said with a tired smile. I am not entirely sure which. Brave, Isaac said firmly from the doorway. He had removed his gun, belt, and hat and looked more relaxed than Sophia had yet seen him. Definitely brave. Well, you are safe here, Sarah declared. We will have a nice quiet evening, a good dinner, and tomorrow Isaac will take you back to Cheyenne for the stage. No more outlaws, no more excitement. It sounded wonderful, almost too good to be true. Sophia allowed herself to relax, to eat pie and drink coffee, to listen as Sarah and Isaac traded news and gossip about people Sophia did not know but found interesting anyway. The conversation flowed easily, and Sophia contributed when she could, finding herself laughing at Sarah's stories about ranch life and Isaac's dry commentary. As the afternoon wore into evening, Sarah put Sophia to work helping prepare dinner, which turned out to be fried chicken, biscuits, and greens from the garden. They worked together companionably, and Sophia realized how much she had missed female company, the easy camaraderie of shared tasks and conversation. Isaac set the table and then disappeared to do evening chores, feeding stock and checking fences. When he returned as the sun was setting, the three of them sat down to dinner together, and Sophia felt a pang of longing for her own family, her mother and sisters back in St. Louis waiting for news. You have grown quiet, Sarah observed as they cleared the dishes. Are you all right? Just missing home, Sophia admitted, and worrying about my mother and sisters. They have been alone for 3 months now, waiting for me. Then we will make sure you get back to them safely, Sarah said firmly. You have come too far to fail now. The words were more prophetic than Sarah could know. Sophia helped wash the dishes, her hands moving automatically while her mind drifted. The gold dust was still there, still heavy, still secret. Tomorrow she would be back on the stage, back to constant vigilance, 300 more miles of fear and hope tangled together. When the work was done, Sarah showed Sophia to a small guest room with a comfortable bed and a window that looked out over the darkening prairie. I hope you will be comfortable here. If you need anything, I am just across the hall. Thank you, Sarah. You have been incredibly kind. Isaac does not often bring people home, Sarah said with a meaningful look. The fact that he brought you tells me you are special. Get some rest, Sophia. Tomorrow will come soon enough. She left Sophia alone with those cryptic words and a mind full of questions. Sophia changed into her nightgown, carefully storing the petticoats where she could reach them quickly if needed, and climbed into bed. She expected to lie awake for hours, but exhaustion claimed her almost immediately. She woke to the sound of voices, urgent and male. For a moment she was disoriented, then memory flooded back and she sat up, reaching for her robe. Moonlight streamed through the window, bright enough to see by, and when she looked outside she saw several horses in the yard and figures moving in the darkness. Sophia pulled on her robe and cautiously opened her door. She could hear Isaac's voice from the main room, and another man's voice, rough with pain. Moving quietly, she made her way down the short hall and peered around the corner. Isaac was there, still fully dressed despite the late hour, and with him were 3 men she did not recognize. One was wounded, blood soaking through a makeshift bandage on his leg. Sarah was heating water on the stove, her expression calm but focused. We ran into them about 10 miles south, one of the men was saying. 5 riders, all armed, asking about a woman traveling alone from California. When we told them we had not seen anyone like that, they got aggressive. We got away, but Johnson here took a bullet. Sophia's blood turned to ice. They were looking for her. Someone had figured out about the gold, and now there were 5 armed men hunting her. Isaac's expression was grim. Did you recognize any of them? The leader had a scar across his face, running from temple to jaw, The others I did not know, but they looked like hardened types. Scarface Charlie, Isaac said quietly. I thought he was operating further north. If he is here, that means someone paid him to come. He turned to Sarah. We need to get Sophia away from here. If they are asking questions, someone will eventually point them toward the ranch. I am right here, Sophia said, stepping into the room. All eyes turned to her, and she saw surprise on the strangers' faces, understanding on Sarah's, and something that looked like determination on Isaac's. And I think I deserve to know what is happening. Isaac crossed to her in 3 long strides. What is happening is that you are in danger. Someone knows you have something valuable, and they have hired killers to take it from you. There was no point in denying it anymore. Sophia met his gaze steadily. How long have you known? I suspected from the moment I saw you in that saloon. A woman alone, traveling from the goldfields, defensive about her luggage, careful about how she moved. Isaac's voice was gentle. I confirmed it this morning when I helped you into the saddle. You favored your left side slightly, the way someone does when they are carrying extra weight in their clothing. And you said nothing. Because whatever you are carrying, I believe you have a right to it. I believe you are trying to do something good for your family, and I do not think that deserves to be punished. Isaac reached out and took her hands, his grip warm and strong. But I also will not let you be killed for it. So we are going to get you out of here tonight, and we are going to make sure you reach St. Louis safely. How? Sophia asked, because she could not think of a single way to escape 5 professional killers. I have an idea, Isaac said, but you are going to have to trust me. Sophia looked into his eyes, those steady gray eyes that had never lied to her, and made her choice. I trust you. The plan Isaac outlined was bold to the point of recklessness. The 3 men who had brought the warning were ranch hands from a neighboring spread, honest men who Isaac trusted. They would take Sophia's distinctive traveling bag, and one of them would wear a dress and bonnet, creating a decoy. They would head north at first light, making themselves obvious, drawing the pursuers away. Meanwhile, Isaac would take Sophia east on a less traveled route, moving fast and quiet, aiming for Fort Laramie where they could get military protection. From there, she could catch a military supply train heading to the railroad, bypassing the stage routes entirely. It is 60 miles to the fort, Isaac said, spreading a map on the table. We can make it in 2 days if we push hard, but you will have to ride like you mean it, Sophia. No stopping except to rest the horses. I can ride, Sophia said firmly, whatever it takes. Sarah was packing supplies, moving with efficient speed, filling saddlebags with food, water, ammunition. You will need warmer clothes, she told Sophia. The nights get cold on the prairie. I have some things that should fit you. While Sarah helped Sophia change into more practical traveling clothes, sturdy trousers and a shirt that would allow her to ride astride, Isaac was outside saddling horses and checking guns. The wounded ranch hand, Johnson, was settled by the fire with his leg bandaged properly, insisting he would be fine. I am sorry to bring this trouble to your door, Sophia told Sarah as she helped her lace up a pair of riding boots. You did not bring the trouble. Greedy men did. Sarah's expression was fierce. And if my brother wants to help you, then I am behind him completely. Isaac is a good judge of character, Sophia. He would not risk his life for someone who was not worth it. I hope I am worth it, Sophia whispered. I hope my father's gold is worth all of this. It is not about the gold, Sarah said quietly. Look at how he looks at you. I have not seen my brother care about someone this way since our parents died. Whatever happens out there on the trail, know that he is doing this because he wants to, because you matter to him. Sophia did not know what to say to that, so she simply nodded and finished dressing. When she emerged into the main room, Isaac turned and his eyes widened slightly. "You look like a proper frontierswoman," he said with approval. "Can you shoot?" "My father taught me." "Good." He handed her a rifle and a gun belt with a revolver. "I hope you will not need them, but hope is not a plan." They left an hour before dawn, slipping away from the ranch while the decoy party prepared for their own departure. The horses Isaac had chosen were strong and fresh, and Sophia's mount was a steady mare with kind eyes. The gold dust in her petticoats, now concealed beneath the men's trousers, felt lighter somehow, as if sharing the secret had eased the burden. They rode east into the rising sun, and Isaac set a pace that was brisk but sustainable. The land around them was vast and empty, broken only by the occasional stand of cottonwoods marking a creek. They saw antelope in the distance, and once a coyote that watched them pass with yellow eyes. Isaac was quiet as they rode, his attention on their surroundings, constantly alert for danger. But when they stopped at mid-morning to water the horses at a small stream, he finally spoke. "Tell me about your family, your mother and sisters." Sophia loosened the mare's girth and let her drink, considering how much to share. But Sarah's words echoed in her mind, and she found herself wanting Isaac to know, wanting him to understand why she had risked so much. "My mother is a gentle woman, artistic and impractical. She married my father for love, against her family's wishes, and has never regretted it even though it meant a life of relative poverty." Sophia smiled at the memory. "She paints beautiful watercolors, but she has never tried to sell them. She says art is for the soul, not for commerce." "And your sisters?" "Emily is 21, clever and sharp-tongued. She wants to be a teacher, but we could never afford to send her to normal school. And Clara is 19, sweet and shy, with a voice like an angel. She should be studying music, but instead she takes in sewing to help make ends meet." Sophia's throat tightened. "The gold will change everything for them. Emily can go to school, Clara can have music lessons, my mother can stop worrying about how to pay the rent." "How much gold?" Isaac asked quietly. Sophia hesitated, then decided he had earned the truth. "Approximately 15 pounds of gold dust. At current prices, that is nearly $5,000. Isaac whistled low. "That is a fortune. It is my father's life. 5 years of back-breaking labor, disease, danger, loneliness. He sent home what he could, but he always said the big strike was coming, that he would make enough for us to be secure forever." Sophia knelt by the stream, splashing cold water on her face. "And he did, finally. But by then the work had broken his body. He survived just long enough to tell me where he had hidden it, to give me the petticoats he had sewn himself, to make me promise I would get it home." "And you have carried it 600 miles, Isaac said, and there was something like awe in his voice. "Sophia, that is extraordinary." "It is terrifying," she corrected. "Every moment of every day knowing that if someone discovers it, I could be robbed, killed, worse, not being able to trust anyone, not being able to rest." She looked up at him, this man who had become her unexpected protector. "Until you." Isaac knelt beside her, his hand gentle on her shoulder. "You can trust me. I will get you to that fort, Sophia, and then to the railroad. I give you my word." "Why?" The question burst out before she could stop it. "Why are you doing this? You barely know me." "I could be lying about everything." "You could be," Isaac agreed, "but you are not. I have met enough liars to know the difference." His hand moved from her shoulder to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing away a drop of water. "And I am doing this because when I look at you, I see courage and determination and love for your family. I see someone worth protecting, someone worth knowing." His eyes were so gray, so clear, reflecting the sky above them. Sophia felt herself leaning into his touch, felt the pull between them growing stronger. "Isaac." "We should keep moving," he said abruptly, pulling back, and Sophia could not tell if the regret she heard was real or imagined. "We need to put more miles behind us before we camp for the night." They rode through the afternoon, stopping only briefly to rest the horses. The land began to change, becoming more rugged with rocky outcroppings and deeper ravines. Isaac kept them to a steady northeast course, always watching their back trail, his hand never far from his gun. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Isaac found them a sheltered spot in a stand of trees near a creek. "We will camp here tonight. No fire in case someone is tracking us. Cold food and cold sleep, I am afraid." "I do not care," Sophia said honestly. "I am just grateful to stop moving." They unsaddled the horses and rubbed them down, then picketed them where they could graze. Isaac spread out bedrolls while Sophia unpacked the food Sarah had provided: jerky, hardtack, dried apples, and a canteen of coffee that was still faintly warm. They ate in companionable silence as the stars began to emerge, brilliant and uncountable in the darkening sky. Sophia had never seen so many stars, had never experienced the vast quiet of the prairie night. It should have been frightening, but with Isaac beside her, it felt almost peaceful. "Tell me about being a lawman," she said as they finished eating. "Do you enjoy it?" "Enjoy is probably the wrong word," Isaac said, leaning back against his saddle. "But it is necessary work, and I am good at it. There is satisfaction in that, in knowing you have made things safer for people who cannot protect themselves. Is it very dangerous? Sometimes. But so is ranching or mining or just living out here. Everything is dangerous if you think about it too much." He turned his head to look at her. "What will you do once you get home? After you deliver the gold to your family?" Sophia had not let herself think that far ahead, had been so focused on just surviving the journey. "I do not know," she admitted. "Help my mother manage the money, I suppose. Make sure Emily gets to school, that Clara gets her music lessons. Beyond that," she shrugged, "I have been so focused on getting home that I have not thought about what comes after." "You should think about what you want," Isaac said quietly. "Not just what your family needs, but what would make you happy." "I want to feel safe," Sophia said immediately. "I want to sleep without nightmares. I want to not be afraid every moment of every day. And after that, when the fear fades." Sophia was quiet for a long moment, listening to the night sounds of the prairie, the wind in the grass, the distant howl of a coyote. "I want to matter to someone," she said finally, so softly she was not sure he heard. "I want to be more than just the responsible daughter, the dutiful sister. I want someone to look at me and see Sophia, not just what I can do for others." "I see you," Isaac said, and his voice was rough with emotion. "I see a woman who is brave and loyal and stronger than she knows. I see someone who carried an impossible burden for 600 miles and never once complained. I see Sophia Brennan, and she is remarkable." Tears pricked at Sophia's eyes. She turned to face him fully, and in the starlight his face was all plains and shadows, beautiful and serious. "Isaac, we should get some sleep," he interrupted, but there was regret in his voice. "Tomorrow will be another long day." Sophia wanted to argue, wanted to push, but exhaustion was catching up with her. She nodded and crawled into her bedroll, listening as Isaac did the same a respectful distance away. But sleep was elusive, and she lay awake for a long time, thinking about gray eyes and gentle hands and the way her heart had started to beat differently whenever Isaac was near. She must have eventually slept, because she woke to Isaac's hand over her mouth and his urgent whisper in her ear. "Do not make a sound. We have company." Sophia's eyes flew open. It was still dark, but the sky was beginning to lighten in the east, that pre-dawn gray that was neither night nor day. Isaac removed his hand from her mouth and pointed, and Sophia saw them. 3 riders, perhaps a quarter-mile away, moving slowly, searching. "They found our trail," Isaac whispered. "We need to move. Now, quietly." They gathered their gear with agonizing care, every sound seeming magnified in the stillness. The horses sensed the tension and stamped nervously, and Isaac soothed them with gentle hands and soft words. Sophia's heart was pounding so hard she thought surely the riders would hear it. Isaac helped her into the saddle, then mounted his own horse. "We ride hard for the fort. No stopping, no matter what. Stay low, stay close to me. Understand?" Sophia nodded, her mouth too dry for speech. Isaac led them out of the trees at a walk, then as soon as they were clear, spurred his horse to a gallop. Sophia followed, leaning low over the mare's neck, feeling the gold dust bounce against her with every stride. Behind them, someone shouted. Then there were gunshots, the bullets cracking through the air, and Sophia's world narrowed to the pounding of hooves and the burning in her lungs and the desperate need to stay in the saddle. Isaac led them into a ravine, using the terrain for cover, then up the other side and across a stretch of open ground. More shots, closer this time, and Sophia heard one whine past her head. Fear gave her strength, and she urged the mare to greater speed, trusting Isaac to know where they were going. They rode for what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes before the sound of pursuit faded. Isaac slowed to a walk, letting the horses catch their breath, and Sophia did the same, her hands shaking on the reins. "Are you all right?" Isaac asked, his own breathing labored. "I think so." Sophia checked herself for wounds and found none. "They were waiting for us." The decoy did not work, or they split their forces. Isaac's expression was grim. "Either way, they are between us and the fort now. We need to change direction. Where can we go?" "There is a settlement about 15 miles north, a trading post on the Platte River." "Not much, but it has a telegraph. We can send word to the fort, get help." Isaac studied the sky, calculating. "If we can reach it by nightfall, we should be safe." They altered course, heading north across increasingly rough terrain. The horses were tiring, and Sophia could feel her own strength waning. But every time she thought about stopping, about giving up, she remembered her father's face, her mother's worry, her sister's hopes. The gold in her petticoats was more than money. It was their future, and she would not fail them now. Midday came and went. They stopped briefly to water the horses and force down some food, but Isaac kept them moving. Once they saw dust on the horizon that might have been pursuit, and once they startled a herd of buffalo that thundered away like a living avalanche. But they saw no more riders, heard no more gunshots. As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, Sophia saw a thin column of smoke rising in the distance. "Is that the trading post?" "Should be," Isaac confirmed, and some of the tension eased from his shoulders. "We are almost there, Sophia, just a few more miles." Those last few miles seemed to take forever, but finally they crested a rise and saw the trading post below. A cluster of rough buildings beside the wide, muddy expanse of the Platte River, with a few wagons and horses visible in a makeshift corral. They rode in cautiously, and a man emerged from the largest building, a grizzled frontiersman with a rifle cradled in his arms. His eyes narrowed as he took in Isaac's badge and Sophia's disheveled appearance. "Deputy," he said with a nod. "You look like you have been riding hard." "We have," Isaac agreed, dismounting stiffly. "I need to send a telegraph to Fort Laramie. We have trouble following us and I need military assistance. Telegraph is inside. Cost you 50 cents. The trader's eyes shifted to Sophia. "The lady looks done in." "My wife can give her a place to rest if she wants." "That would be appreciated," Isaac said. He helped Sophia down from her horse and she swayed, her legs barely holding her. His arm came around her waist, steadying her, and Sophia leaned into his strength gratefully. The trader's wife proved to be a broad, practical woman named Martha who took one look at Sophia and hustled her into a back room with a bed. "You sleep, honey. Whatever trouble you have got, it will still be there when you wake up, but you will be better able to handle it with some rest." Sophia wanted to protest, wanted to stay with Isaac, but her body betrayed her. She collapsed onto the bed and knew nothing more. She woke to darkness and voices, urgent and male. For a confused moment, she thought she was back at the ranch, but then memory returned and she sat up, reaching instinctively for the gun Isaac had given her. It was still at her hip, and the weight of the gold was still pressing against her legs. Neither had been disturbed. Sophia crept to the door and listened. Isaac's voice, calm but firm. Another man's voice, rough and demanding, and underneath it all the sound of many horses. She eased the door open and peered out. The main room of the trading post was crowded with men, dusty and armed, and at their head was a man with a vicious scar running from temple to jaw. Scarface Charlie, the killer Isaac's friends had warned them about. "I know she is here, Deputy," the scarred man was saying. "We tracked you both from that ranch. Now you can make this easy or you can make it hard, but either way, I am leaving here with that woman and whatever she is carrying." "You are not taking her anywhere," Isaac said flatly. He stood with his back to the counter, his hand on his gun, facing down 5 armed men without a flicker of fear. "I have sent for military assistance. They will be here by morning. Your best option is to ride out now while you still can." Scarface Charlie laughed, a sound like rocks grinding. "You think I am afraid of soldiers. By the time they get here, we will be long gone. Now step aside or I will kill you where you stand." "You are welcome to try," Isaac said, and his voice was cold as winter ice. "But know that I will take at least 2 of you with me, maybe 3. How do you like those odds, boys?" The men shifted uneasily, and Sophia saw doubt flicker across some faces. They were hired guns, not dedicated outlaws, and none of them wanted to be the one Isaac shot first. "There is another option," Sophia said, stepping out of the back room with her gun drawn. Every head turned toward her, and she saw Isaac's expression flicker between alarm and admiration. "You could all just leave. The gold is mine, legally inherited from my father. Taking it makes you thieves and killing us makes you murderers. Is that really worth whatever you are being paid?" $5,000 is worth a lot," Scarface Charlie said, his eyes raking over her with calculation. "But I am starting to think you might be worth even more. Woman like you, pretty and spirited, I could sell you south of the border for twice what that gold is worth." Rage flooded through Sophia, hot and cleansing. She raised the gun, sighting down the barrel the way her father had taught her. "The first man who touches me dies. That is a promise." "Sophia, get back," Isaac said urgently, but she ignored him. This was her fight, her burden. She would not let Isaac die for her gold. The tableau held for a long, frozen moment. Then one of the hired guns, younger than the others, took a step back. "I did not sign on for killing women or lawmen. I am out." "Me too," said another, edging toward the door. "This is getting too complicated." "Cowards!" Scarface Charlie snarled, but 2 of his 5 men were already leaving, mounting their horses and riding away into the night. That left 3, and suddenly the odds were much better. "What will it be, Charlie?" Isaac asked quietly. 3 against 2. "You might win, but you will definitely bleed. Is it worth it?" For a moment, Sophia thought the outlaw would back down. Then his face twisted with fury and his hand dropped to his gun. "Kill them both." Everything happened at once. Isaac drew and fired in one smooth motion, his first shot taking Scarface Charlie in the chest. Sophia fired at the man to Charlie's left, saw him stagger back with a cry. The third man got off a shot that splintered the door frame beside her head, and then Isaac fired again, and the man went down. Silence fell, broken only by the ringing in Sophia's ears and the ragged sound of her own breathing. 3 bodies lay on the floor, and the acrid smell of gunpowder filled the air. Isaac stood frozen for a moment, then holstered his gun and crossed to Sophia in 3 long strides. "Are you hurt?" "Did he hit you?" "No, I am fine." Sophia's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the gun. "Is it over?" "It is over," Isaac confirmed. He gently took the gun from her hands and pulled her into his arms, and Sophia collapsed against him, all the fear and exhaustion and relief pouring out in a storm of tears. Isaac held her, one hand stroking her hair, murmuring soft reassurances. "You are safe. You did so well." "It is over now, Sophia. You are safe." The trading post owner and his wife emerged from wherever they had been hiding, and soon there were others, settlers and travelers who had been lying low during the confrontation. Someone went for the local law, such as it was, and someone else helped Isaac move the bodies outside. Through it all, Sophia sat in a chair by the cold stove, wrapped in a blanket Martha had provided, trying to process what had just happened. She had shot a man. Maybe killed him, she was not sure. The thought should have horrified her, but all she felt was a strange numbness. Isaac returned and knelt in front of her, his hands covering hers. "Sophia, look at me." She met his eyes, those steady gray eyes that had become her anchor. "I killed someone. You defended yourself." "There is a difference." Isaac's grip tightened. "You did what you had to do to survive. Your father would be proud of you." "I do not feel proud. I feel empty. That will pass. Trust me, I know." Isaac glanced around, then seemed to make a decision. "The military will be here in the morning, like I said. When they arrive, I am going to recommend they escort us the rest of the way to the railroad. No more chances, no more risks. We get you on a train to St. Louis and this nightmare ends." "And then what?" Sophia asked, because suddenly the future seemed to loom very large and uncertain. "And then you go home to your family. You give them your father's gold. You help your sisters achieve their dreams." Isaac paused. "And maybe, if you want, you write to me. Let me know how you are doing." "Just letters." The words came out before Sophia could stop them, raw and honest. "After everything we have been through, you just want letters." Isaac's expression was pained. "Sophia, you live in St. Louis. I live in Wyoming Territory. You have family who needs you, a whole life waiting. And I have my work, my responsibilities. How could we could try," Sophia interrupted. "We could at least try, Isaac. You said you see me, that I matter to you. Was that just words?" "No." The answer was immediate and fierce. "No, it was not just words. You matter to me more than I thought possible for someone I have known such a short time. But I will not ask you to give up everything for me. You deserve better than a frontier lawman who might get killed any day. Do not I get a say in what I deserve?" Sophia pulled her hands free and cupped his face, forcing him to look at her. "I have been making decisions for other people my whole life, Isaac, taking care of my family, fulfilling my father's wishes. For once, just this once, I want to make a decision for myself. And I am deciding that I want you. Sophia, I know it is fast. I know it is impractical. I know there are 100 reasons why we should not do this." Sophia leaned forward until their foreheads touched. "But I also know that I have never felt safer, more seen, more alive than I have with you. And if you feel even a fraction of what I feel, then we owe it to ourselves to try." Isaac's arms came around her, pulling her close, and when he spoke his voice was rough with emotion. "I feel everything you feel. More, probably. You have turned my whole world upside down in 3 days, Sophia Brennan." "Then take a chance on me," she whispered. "Please." His answer was a kiss, fierce and tender and full of promise. Sophia kissed him back, pouring all her fear and hope and love into it, and for the first time in 600 miles, she felt truly safe. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. "We will figure it out," he said firmly. "I do not know how yet, but we will find a way. I am not letting you go, Sophia. Not now, not ever." "Good," Sophia said and kissed him again. The military escort arrived at dawn. A detachment of cavalry from Fort Laramie led by a young lieutenant who took one look at the bodies and Isaac's badge and started asking very efficient questions. Isaac gave a concise report, leaving out nothing, and the lieutenant nodded gravely. "You did good work here, Deputy Zimmerman. These men were wanted for robbery and murder across 3 territories. There is a reward for bringing them in. Give it to the trading post owner," Isaac said. "He provided shelter when we needed it." The lieutenant agreed and then turned to Sophia. "Madam, Deputy Zimmerman has requested we escort you to the railroad at Sydney. It will take us 2 days, but you will be under military protection the entire way." "Is that acceptable?" "Very acceptable, Lieutenant. Thank you." They rode out an hour later, Sophia and Isaac in the middle of the cavalry column, finally, blessedly safe. The soldiers were cheerful and professional, and the lieutenant proved to be good company, full of stories about frontier life. But Sophia barely heard them. All her attention was on Isaac, riding beside her, his hand occasionally reaching out to touch hers as if reassuring himself she was real. They did not talk much, did not need to. Everything important had been said. The 2-day journey to Sydney passed in a blur. They camped under the stars with sentries posted, ate military rations that were surprisingly good, and talked late into the night about everything and nothing. Isaac told her about his childhood, his dreams of being a rancher, his fear that he would never be as good a man as his father had been. Sophia told him about her sisters, her mother's paintings, her own half-formed wishes for a life beyond duty and responsibility, and slowly, carefully, they began to plan. Sophia would go to St. Louis, deliver the gold, make sure her family was settled. It would take time, perhaps several months, to arrange everything properly. Meanwhile, Isaac would talk to the territorial marshal about a transfer, see if there were any law positions available in Missouri or Kansas. They would write letters, visit when they could, and when the time was right, when Sophia's family was secure and Isaac had arranged his affairs, they would marry. It was not a perfect plan. There were 100 things that could go wrong. But it was their plan, built on hope and trust, and the certainty that what they had found together was worth fighting for. Sydney turned out to be a rough railroad town, all noise and activity and the constant whistle of trains. The lieutenant escorted them to the station and waited while Isaac purchased Sophia's ticket to St. Louis, a journey that would take 5 days by rail. "I will write you when I get home," Sophia promised as they stood on the platform, the train building steam behind them. "Care of the marshal's office in Cheyenne. That will reach me," Isaac confirmed. His hands were on her waist, holding her close despite the curious looks from passers-by. "Be safe, Sophia. Take care of yourself and your family." "I will." Sophia reached up to touch his face, memorizing the feel of him. "And you be safe, too. No more gunfights with outlaws if you can help it." "I will do my best." Isaac kissed her, soft and sweet and full of longing. "This is not goodbye. It is just until we meet again." "Until we meet again," Sophia echoed. And then the conductor was calling for passengers to board, and she had no choice but to let go. She found a seat by the window and watched as the train pulled away. Isaac standing on the platform, growing smaller and smaller until he was just a distant figure. Then he was gone, And Sophia was alone with her thoughts and the gold dust in her petticoats, and a heart that felt fuller than it had in years. The train journey was long but uneventful. Sophia changed trains in Omaha, then again in Chicago, and finally, 5 days after leaving Sydney, she stepped onto the platform in St. Louis on a warm August morning. Her mother was there, grayer and thinner than Sophia remembered, and her sisters, Emily with her sharp eyes already filling with tears, Clara hanging back shyly. The reunion was chaotic and emotional, everyone talking at once, and it was not until they were safely home in the small house Sophia had left 4 months earlier that she finally told them everything. She told them about her father's death, about the gold he had mined and hidden, about the special petticoats he had sewn. She told them about the journey, edited for their sensibilities but honest about the dangers. And she told them about Isaac, her voice softening as she described the deputy marshal who had risked everything to keep her safe. "You love him," Emily said, and it was not a question. "I do," Sophia admitted. "I know it seems sudden, but love does not follow a schedule," her mother interrupted gently. "Your father proposed to me after knowing me for 2 weeks. We were married a month later and had 30 good years together. If this Isaac makes you feel the way your father made me feel, then you should hold on to him." Over the following weeks, Sophia began the process of converting the gold to cash, working with a reputable banker who asked few questions and provided a fair price. $5,000 was indeed a fortune, enough to pay off all debts, buy the house outright, and invest the remainder to provide income. Emily enrolled in normal school to study teaching. Clara began music lessons with one of the best instructors in St. Louis. Their mother set up a small studio and began painting again, her watercolors selling modestly but steadily. And Sophia wrote letters to Isaac, long, detailed accounts of her days, her family, her slowly forming plans for the future. His responses came regularly, written in a clear, strong hand, full of news about his work, his sister Sarah, and the slow process of arranging a transfer. Months passed. Autumn turned to winter and winter to spring. Sophia's life in St. Louis was comfortable, secure in ways it had never been before. But she found herself restless, looking out the window toward the west, thinking about gray eyes and steady hands and a kiss on a train platform. In April of 1877, nearly 9 months after they had parted, a telegram arrived. "Transfer approved. Position in Kansas City. Will arrive May 15th. Marry me, Isaac." Sophia's answer was immediate. Yes, yes, yes. Isaac arrived on a warm May morning, dusty from travel but smiling, and Sophia ran to meet him without caring who saw. He caught her up in his arms and spun her around, and when he set her down, he was still smiling. "I missed you," he said simply. "I missed you too, so much." Sophia took his hand and led him toward the house where her family waited. "Come meet everyone properly. Emily has been dying to interrogate you, and Clara wants to sing for you, and my mother has made enough food to feed an army." The meeting was everything Sophia had hoped. Emily did indeed interrogate Isaac, but he handled her pointed questions with good humor and honesty. Clara shyly sang an aria that left everyone in tears, and Sophia's mother welcomed Isaac with open arms and an invitation to call her Mother Brennan. They were married 3 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the local church, with Sophia's family and a few close friends in attendance. Sarah made the journey from Wyoming, delighted to see her brother so happy, and stood up with Sophia as her maid of honor. Isaac's position in Kansas City was with the Territorial Marshal's office, working cases across Missouri and Kansas. It was dangerous work, but no more so than what he had been doing in Wyoming, and it allowed him to come home to Sophia every few weeks. They found a small house on the outskirts of Kansas City, close enough to St. Louis for Sophia to visit her family regularly, far enough to build their own life. Sophia discovered she had a talent for managing money, and she began helping other families invest wisely, building a modest but successful consulting business. Their first child, a son they named Jacob after Isaac's father, was born in the spring of 1878. He had his father's gray eyes and his mother's dark hair, and he was the joy of both their lives. A daughter, Hannah, followed 2 years later, and then another son, Marcus, 2 years after that. Sophia's sisters both married well, Emily to a fellow teacher and Clara to a musician who adored her. Their mother lived to see all her grandchildren, painting portraits of each one, before passing peacefully in her sleep in 1885. Isaac eventually retired from active law work, taking a position training new marshals, work that kept him home more and put him in less danger. Sophia's business continued to grow, and she became known throughout Missouri as one of the shrewdest financial minds in the state. But for all their success, all their comfortable life, the story they told most often was the one about 600 miles, gold dust hidden in petticoats, and a cowboy lawman who never once searched her but instead trusted her enough to risk everything. They grew old together, surrounded by children and grandchildren, telling and retelling the story of how they met, how they fell in love, how they built a life on trust and courage, and the certainty that some chances are worth taking. On a warm summer evening in 1920, Sophia sat on the porch of their Kansas City home, now expanded and comfortable, watching her great-grandchildren play in the yard. Isaac sat beside her, his hair white now, his face lined with years, but his gray eyes still clear and steady. "Do you ever regret it?" Sophia asked, a question she had asked before and would ask again. "Giving up Wyoming, changing your whole life?" "Not for a single moment," Isaac answered, as he always did. He took her hand, his fingers interlacing with hers with the ease of 43 years of practice. "You were worth 600 miles then, Sophia. You are worth 1,000 times that now." Sophia leaned her head on his shoulder and watched the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, and thought about a young woman with gold dust in her petticoats, and a young lawman who saw past the secret to the person beneath. "I love you, Isaac Zimmerman," she said softly. "I love you too, Sophia Zimmerman," he replied. "Always have, always will." And in the golden evening light, surrounded by the life they had built together, they sat hand in hand and remembered, grateful for every mile, every moment, every choice that had led them here. Their story became family legend, passed down through generations. The original petticoats, carefully preserved, were donated to a museum in 1925, a tangible reminder of one woman's courage and one man's trust. Letters between Sophia and Isaac, carefully saved, provided historians with a detailed account of frontier life and the challenges faced by those who dared to build something new in a wild land. But more than the historical record, more than the artifacts and letters, what endured was the love story itself. A tale of trust given and earned, of risks taken and rewarded, of two people who found each other against impossible odds and chose to build a life together. Isaac passed away peacefully in 1928 at the age of 82, surrounded by family. Sophia followed him 6 months later, unable to imagine a world without her partner, her protector, her love. They were buried side by side in Kansas City, their shared headstone bearing a simple inscription. She carried gold for 600 miles. He never searched her once. Together, they found something more valuable than treasure. Their descendants continued to thrive, spreading across the country, carrying with them the values Sophia and Isaac had lived by: courage, trust, loyalty, and the belief that love was worth any risk, any sacrifice, any journey. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, when the wind blew just right across the Kansas prairie, it almost seemed like you could hear the echo of hoofbeats. A man and a woman riding toward their future, carrying nothing but hope in each other's hearts, proving that the greatest treasures are not the ones we hide in our clothes, but the ones we find in the people brave enough to trust us with our secrets, and gentle enough to honor them with their silence. The gold dust had bought security, education, opportunities for a family that desperately needed them. But the real treasure, the thing that endured long after the last of the gold was spent, was the love between a woman who dared everything and a man who protected her not by searching her secrets, but by becoming someone worthy of keeping them. In the end, that was the legacy Sophia Brennan Zimmerman and Isaac Zimmerman left behind. Not gold, not glory, but the simple, profound truth that real love is built on trust, watered with courage, and grows strongest when two people choose each other, again and again, through all the miles and years and challenges life can offer. And that is the kind of treasure that never fades, never diminishes, but instead multiplies with every generation that hears the story and believes, however briefly, in the possibility of finding their own person worth trusting with everything, even 600 miles of gold dust hidden where no one would think to search. Their story ended where all good love stories should end, not with a dramatic climax or a tragic parting, but with two old people holding hands in the twilight, grateful for every moment they had shared, secure in the knowledge that they had chosen well, loved deeply, and built something that would endure long after they were gone. And perhaps that is the real magic of Sophia and Isaac's story. Not the gold, not the danger, not even the romance, but the simple fact that they proved love does not need to be complicated to be profound, does not need to be easy to be worthwhile, and does not need to be perfect to be everything two people need. 600 miles, gold dust in petticoats, a cowboy who never searched her once. And from that beginning, a love that lasted a lifetime and echoed through generations, reminding everyone who heard it that sometimes the greatest leaps of faith are rewarded with exactly what our hearts have been searching for all along.